Hi, hello. Hi, hello. My name is Al, and I've been off Instagram for over 3 years now. And honestly, not much has changed.
Quit using social media.
Life without social media has definitely changed me.
I took a break from social media for 90 days, and it was the best decision I made.
This week I decided I'm going to take a break off of social media. And
today I will be talking about why I deleted social media and how it totally and completely changed my life.
What if I told you deleting social media for 30 days could change your entire life? If you want to reset your mind, build discipline, and take back control of your life, try it.
Not only am I okay without social media, but I think I'm actually better off. I think I'm happier. I've been more successful professionally because I don't use social media. To see if I could actually convince more of you that you too would be better off if you quit social media.
And 30 days without social media. It's been an incredible experience. Coming from someone who just did this, I promise you, it'll change your life.
Hi, hello there. My name is Al, and as the title suggests, I've been off Instagram for 3 years and counting. It was around the 1 year mark when I started to wonder if, I should feel different by now. And I continued to wonder that until I made this video. I just wanted to share my findings with you, especially if you're curious about if social media detoxes are all they're hyped up to be and what the most recent and rigorous studies have to say about that. And I was kind of surprised to find that my experience of kind of feeling indifferent without the app in my life lined up with reality, and it turns out more or less it does. And the punchline of all of this is that even though there was a net neutral impact on my life, I probably won't be bringing it back. Yeah, if you're interested, sit back and relax and we will talk about it. So people go off Instagram for a number of reasons. A few of the most common are to improve their mental health, to become more present. Usually these apps are somewhat addictive, regaining that control over your life so that you're not just drawn to this app when you're bored. The big takeaway is that social media is a barrier to a better version of you. And when there's a really strong message like that, there is definitely money to be made off of it. And in the case of social media, also digital detoxing itself is estimated to be $4 to $5 billion in 2024. And this industry encompasses any product or service that is going to limit or provide some barrier or obstacle to your access to social media apps, or any apps for that matter. So these could be digital detox retreats or courses or books. There's lock boxes for phones where you put your phone in, you set a timer, and you're not allowed, obviously, to go back in the box. There's also a large dumb phone industry, and they look pretty cool, to be honest. That's not to say that the social media industry itself is not worth much, much more. It's estimated to be at least 97 billion at the time of this recording. Yeah, social media is still king when it comes to money, but there is a very strong promise associated with digital detoxing. Okay, so before we get into the research and all of that, I just wanted to go over a brief history of my relationship with Instagram. I mainly used it for the same reasons everyone does. See what's going on in the world, to stay in touch with culture and internet stuff, and stay connected with friends. And I also use it as a creative outlet because at the time I was working in a lab, I would make a lot of science videos. I think science lab stuff looks and is super cool. So I would make time lapses of my experiments going on my bench. Yeah, it was awesome. I really liked that part of it. There was a lot of downsides. Of course, it was a huge time sink. I'm guessing I spent anywhere from 1 to 4 hours a day on Instagram. So it kept me from other parts of living. I was definitely susceptible to comparison, and that's an awful part of it, especially in 2020. That's when everything went crazy. So that's when I learned that I didn't really want to know what other people were up to or what was going on in other people's lives. I was angry all the time, and I had so much negative emotions about the political stuff that was going on, and it would just leak into my everyday life and into my everyday relationships. It was bad, and I'm sure a lot of us felt that way in 2020. And then, of course, there's FOMO about not having the app, but there's also a lot of FOMO embedded in the app itself, just comparing your life with other people's life or comparing yourself to other people and feeling like your life isn't enough and you're not enough. So just the comparison game. So over this period of heavy usage, I quit Instagram. I call them soft quits because I would either limit my use or delete the app and use it on the weekend, or just not log on for weeks or months or something. But I would always return to it because it was just a habit. It was just part of my life. But at some point, I actually quit Facebook and I realized I didn't miss it. So I was always thinking about what would happen if I for real went off of Instagram. At some point I was like, there's only a few people I actually want to see this anyway, so why don't I just send it directly to them? In 2022, I deactivated my account. It's still deactivated, it's not actually deleted, and I haven't logged on since, except for 2 times. Yeah, so I guess I have gone back on. The 2 times that I logged back on, I kind of just wanted to get rid of it again, but you have to wait for a week before you can deactivate your account again. But it was nice to pop back in, and it was kind of like flipping through a yearbook, so it was a nice experience. So I think what I expected would happen, all of the things that I got from it, I would lose. So I was afraid I would lose touch with culture and the internet and with my friends. I was basically afraid I'd become like invisible to the world and I would not know what's going on in the world. I think it's probably especially true if you're like on a college campus or something. But in my case, yeah, I still kept in touch with all of my closest friends. If someone wanted to know what was going on in my life, they just text me. Or if I take photos and I'm excited about them, I send them to my closest people in my life. I consumed news more intentionally through other sources. Somehow I also knew what was going on like in culture and internet, mostly through YouTube. It was nice for life to finally feel private. There are some things I actually do miss or actually feel are valuable after this 3-year period, and that's like keeping in touch with small businesses. So a lot of like hairdressers or artists or tattoo artists or whatever, they showcase their work on Instagram. So I can't really like check out that kind of stuff. And also not having a Facebook means I can't use like Facebook Marketplace or No Buy or whatever. But there's so much I don't miss. I don't miss ads, and I don't miss feeling like eyeballs connected to an ATM. I don't miss all of the negative emotions like comparison and anger. I don't miss just handing over my privacy and my private life to everybody, which is ironic because I'm making this video. I feel like that's a topic for some other day. Also, do not miss this very real feeling of being watched but not seen. And I also don't miss this flattening of my personality. I recently learned this concept known as context collapse. So context collapse is a concept that was developed by Dana Boyd and Alice Marwick in the late 2000s. It describes what happens when multiple distinct social audiences or groups who would normally be separated in physical space and time are flattened into a single context outline. And when they're all in one place, you kind of revert to like the lowest common denominator version of yourself. If you're like more outgoing and risque with this group, and if you're more reserved and professional with this group, then your net personality is probably just like a smiley photo and a very safe caption or something like that. So in support of this idea of personality flattening, there was a 2018 study that looked at over 6,000 Facebook users, and they found that the Facebook users that had larger and more diverse networks tended to post more often, but there was a lot less variability in the language that they actually used. So I think we're ready to ask the big question, which is, does this narrative hold up in the research? And the answer to that is that the research is largely inconsistent and is very mixed. The most consistent finding and most compelling finding with social media detox is that it's beneficial for women that have body image concerns. And this is mainly for visual apps like Instagram. In researching this video or this topic, I was mainly focusing on meta-analyses. So these are considered like the highest tier research for questions of this nature because they look at all of the primary research, normalize them into a value which is known as SMD. And SMD is standardized mean difference. It expresses the difference between two groups' means in units of their pooled standard deviation, using either Cohen's d or Hedges g calculations. In other words, SMD tells you how far apart two groups are, and it allows us to compare studies that use different measurement scales or units. And on this scale, a small effect is typically regarded to be around 0.2, a medium effect is around 0.5, and a large effect is 0.8 or greater. Let's do a quick thought experiment. So let's pretend that we're doing a meta-analysis and we want to know if yoga affects resting heart rate. So we find two studies. The first study uses a group of college kids and the second study uses a bunch of general population. So the second study is using people that are like 20 to 60 years old. But both studies show that yoga leads to a drop of 5 beats per minute in resting heart rate. But what's important and what would be revealed in your SMD is that in the college group, this is more significant because they have a lower resting heart rate compared with the Gen Pop group. And this is the best way, not necessarily a perfect way, to look at a bunch of different studies that have different measurements or different populations. The most rigorous meta-analysis to date was done in May of 2025, and this was the first meta-analysis that specifically looked at social media abstinence rather than a social media detox, and it specifically looked at the effects of the abstinence on well-being and life satisfaction. And the results were that social media abstinence basically does nothing for positive affect, negative affect, or life satisfaction. But that's not to say that you may not benefit. There are many studies that show improvements in mental health and well-being. There are also lots of studies that show the opposite, and there are also studies that show nothing. And for each of these categories, these outcomes can be significant or they can be not significant. So some of the other things to consider is all of the different factors that are involved. So to start, there's social media detox and there's abstinence. So abstinence is a complete quit. There are studies looking at passive versus active use of apps. There are gender and age-specific research. There is app-specific studies. So comparing like Instagram versus Facebook versus TikTok. There are research questions that focus on very specific like baseline populations, like people that have very severe mental health issues. Those are just to name a few of the factors. So it makes a lot of sense that me, someone that was pretty average across the board for positive, negative, baseline, whatever, I didn't really experience any big changes. I decided to do something really fun and do a meta-analysis of meta-analyses. I just wanted to see, like, if I combine a bunch of studies from social media detoxes compared with other health interventions, how social media detoxes fare. I thought this was really cool because sleep and exercise appear to be the most effective way to improve your mental health and well-being by a significant factor. So again, this chart is looking at SMD. So that's the most appropriate way to compare all of these meta-analyses to each other. Yeah, social media abstinence or detox doesn't really stand out among all of these different health interventions. And if you want to take a look at this chart later, it's going to be linked below. So my big takeaway from this is that the pros and cons of doing a social media detox are going to be largely context dependent. Yay! Yay, biology. That's always the answer. It's always context dependent. For most of us, quitting is not going to transform your life in any significant or major way. And I think, hear me out, I think that should be the expectation. But that's really boring. So if nothing's going to happen to you, then why would you even consider it? And my answer to that is not every decision or experiment that we have in life needs to be life-changing. We should still be able to do things even though they're not transformative. I think that lowers the bar to trying new things. For instance, I moved into this place, it didn't have a microwave, and we still don't have a microwave, like 4 years later. And it's not something I'm trying to add to my kitchen. And I think this ties in perfectly with this idea I recently read about in Deep Work by Cal Newport, and this is called the any benefit approach. Because when you ask people why they will download Instagram or Facebook or whatever, they usually say something that is kind of like a minimal benefit, and then they'll adopt the app just for that small benefit. And this is not to doubt that benefits exist from downloading new tools, but it's kind of to draw into question like how easy it is to get us to do something even if it has like a tiny little benefit. So he argues that tools in our life should be selected not based on like the any benefit approach, but more kind of structured into considering how that tool is going to impact either our work values or our personal values. In the case of the microwave, the clear benefits are, there's actually a lot. You can cook food faster, you can cook a lot of different kinds of foods. And the biggest benefit is no one thinks you're a conspiracy theorist if you have a microwave. And the big con was just that it's cluttered, and I prefer to use an air fryer or a toaster oven. So in this case, my small value of like keeping the counter decluttered outweighed all of those great benefits of the microwave. So maybe the question should not be, does this thing transform my life? But does this tool add to my values, or does it distract from them? That might be a little corny, but I think it's a good question. So, after going through all of that, my recommendation is that if you're curious and you have a problem app, or even if you don't, then experiment with it. Try to limit your use or delete it, deactivate it, whatever. Although I will note that there are some sources that say that the optimal time to be away from these apps is 1 week. So if you are going to try it, maybe try a week. But I think the big takeaway here is to not expect it to be transformational, that not everything in life needs to be totally transformational, or at least not right away. And if you do decide to do it, not having it around and having that extra space allows for you to see your true values emerge. And for me, those values were kind of like authentic connection. To put it succinctly, there may be a time in my life where I get it back if I want, and I'm fine with that too, but it will probably be more aligned with my values at that point. It feels nice to know that I can live without something that I used to think was like so ingrained in my life, and that feels good. So if you think you're gonna try it, if you have tried it before, let me know what your thoughts are. I think there is kind of a big conversation to be had about this topic. Just like the research itself, there is so many factors to consider and how all of that is intertwined. So if you have any thoughts, I'm happy to discuss. Please share your experiences. Yeah, thank you for watching. All of my links to the literature that I talked about will be in the description, and also the matrix chart that I showed with the SMD values comparing all of the different health interventions will be linked below. Let's do this again sometime. This was fun. And if this is a fascinating subject to you, I highly recommend you check out Howtown Showdown's episode where they break down a really thorough debate about how adolescents are affected by social media, and they have a really great resource Google Doc as well that goes over actually a lot of the literature that I looked at too. Definitely check that out. I found it really interesting. I thought the debate style was perfect and very respectful, and I wish that there was more content and debate styles like that. So have fun and check that out, and I will see you next time.